Michael Timberlake with our friends at Timberlake and Lee joining us this morning. Good morning.
Good morning.
Thanks for being here with us, Michael. While we wait for callers this morning, we want to talk about hit and run accidents or crashes. It's obviously something that no one wants to find themselves in. So what is the best course of action when that happens?
Yeah, I mean, we often get, people that say, look, I was either involved in an accident where somebody ran from the scene of the wreck in their vehicle, or that it could be a situation where, your car was, somebody changed lane suddenly and you had to move to avoid them and you were run off the road. And so, how do you call the police? What do you do when this happens? It's never going to hurt anybody to make a non-emergency hotline call if you're not injured, but if you are injured, obviously call 911 after this incident, and provide any information you can about the other vehicle. Recently, there have been a lot of vehicles that are manufactured with dash cams or in-car cameras, and you can get a lot of information from that, and that's certainly beneficial when we're going back and looking at it, try to figure out who may be at fault. Witnesses and identification is very helpful. Tag numbers are also very helpful. You can provide that to the police and they can typically find at least the owner of a vehicle in that situation. Now, but what if you can't find them? Or what if you can't locate any insurance that they may have? In that situation, you can look to your own insurance policy to recover for damages to your property, damage to your vehicle, and or for injury if you have what we call uninsured or underinsured motorist coverage and collision coverage. That's available to you through your own insurance and can pay for damages caused by somebody who leaves the scene of an accident.
So is it best to call an attorney if you realize that you're caught up in this to kind of help be the buffer between your insurance and maybe what's actually happening, or what's the advice that you have?
Well, obviously, if a situation is not cut and dry, if it's not clear about who was at fault or who was involved in the wreck, then attorneys can provide a lot of information or a lot of assistance in terms of investigating, trying to track down witnesses, talking to the police officer. They can do a lot of things that an individual layperson just doesn't know how to do or hasn't done before, and provide assistance with trying to find out, the evidence that you need to prove your case.
So what happens, because this has happened to one of my friends where she was involved in a hit and run and then the person leaves and then comes back. Does that kind of change the game?
It's interesting because we do have that. We run across that on occasion, that somebody will all of a sudden either just, decide they're not going to stop and then come back. And I don't know if they, get a conscience or remorse or whatever it is, they do come back. Typically that's not a fact that is really appealing for them if the case goes to trial, that they left the scene of the accident and then only came back for whatever reason. So that's something that can be admissible and typically enhances damages in the case, but it's in and of itself is not necessarily something that allows you to get, additional funds in every situation.
Let's go ahead and go to the phone lines right now. We have Jack on standby. Jack, good morning. You can go ahead with your question.
Yeah, I got my wife in a nursing home and she got dementia, and we put her in. They said we'd have to pay the first payment, and if then on Medicaid, we'd make the rest of the payments. And I was trying to find out if that's true or false.
Well, you typically, long-term care, nursing home care is not going to be something that Medicare will pay for, after the first 21 days. You get basically a rehabilitation stint through Medicare that they'll pay for, and then after that, you either have to pay out of your pocket or you have to qualify for Medicaid. You can qualify for Medicaid if you have an income of less than $2,000 in your household per month, and there are other types of things that you would look at in that situation. What you have to be careful with is if you have assets that you transferred within 5 years of the date that you try to qualify for Medicaid, they will look back at that and you can be disqualified. So a lot of times, you need to make sure that you know what you're doing and that you have the appropriate resources available to apply for Medicaid in Alabama.
All right. Well, thank you so much for being here with us. And remember, you can always call our friends over at Timberlake and League for any other questions that you may have.
Thanks for having me.
All right, we'll be right back. Thanks, Michael.